CME just lost its #1 spot for the first time since late 2023, meaning Binance now holds more Bitcoin futures open interest than CME. Welcome back to Black Room Trade. In this playlist, we don't talk about price prediction, we read market condition structure, positioning, and behavior. So if you want to understand why market moves instead of chasing the signals, you're in the right place. Now let's get into it. On December 22nd, CME held about 123,000 Bitcoin in open interest. Today, it's closer to 102,000. We're talking about a 17% drop in just 9 days, including another 8% in the last 24 hours alone. At the same time, Binance is sitting at around 128,000 Bitcoin, even slightly higher. So here's the real question. Did institutions leave Bitcoin or did they leave a trade? Because those two things are very different. And what's underneath this tells us a much more interesting story. To understand why CME shift matters, you first need to understand what CME actually is. CME isn't retail. It's not directional traders chasing candles. It's institutionals' money. Money that needs regulations, cash settlements, and hedging tools. And the main strategy they use isn't a price bet. It's what we call a basis trade. The trade is simple. You buy spot Bitcoin, often through an ETF, and you short futures to capture the premium between futures and spot. So you're not betting on Bitcoin going up, you're harvesting a spread. For example, you bought Bitcoin at $100,000 at the same time, locking a sales price at $101,000 using a futures contract that settles on a fixed date. When that date arrives, spot and future price meets at the same level. If Bitcoin rises to $105,000, the spot position gains $5,000 while the future position loses $4,000, leaving a guaranteed $1,000 profit. The trade makes money from the price gap between spot and futures, not from predicting Bitcoin's direction. For the most part of this year, that spread was attractive, but according to data cited in recent report, the annualized basis rate has compressed to around 5%. Earlier this year, that same trade was paying closer to 15%. So we're talking about a 2/3 collapse in profitability. So institutions didn't turn bearish, they simply stopped getting paid. And when a low risk trade like this stops paying, professionals don't argue with it, they cut it. And that's probably why CME open interest dropped from roughly 175,000 Bitcoin earlier this year to about 102,000 today. This isn't fear, it's looking more like a capital discipline. However, look at what didn't collapse. Binance open interest stayed steady at around 128,000 Bitcoin, and that matters a lot because Binance is mostly directional positioning. These are traders expressing views on where price goes next, not arbitrage desks capturing yield. So when CME unwinds while Binance holds firm, it tells you something specific. The hedge money left, the arbitrage money left, and what remains is directional exposure. Now, directional exposure, it's cautious because traders are still involved, but they're not pressing size because they're prepared to exit with speed. The total open interest across exchanges has declined slightly in recent days. Leverage is being reduced into year ends, and that sounds healthy because that means fewer forced liquidation is going to happen, but also it means that the market is compressed. There's less leverage, there's less participant, less movement, which makes the next catalyst a lot more dangerous for both the bears and the bulls. Here's where the contradiction shows up. Sentiment has been deeply fearful, and the fear and greed index has been in extreme fear for about a month. ETF flows tells the same story. Since the all-time high, over $5.5 billion has flowed out, and the price so far has confirmed it because Bitcoin can't reclaim 90,000. I know on the surface this looks bearish, but now look underneath. Large holder wallets holding over 1,000 Bitcoin are accumulating at the fastest pace since July, and their accumulation's trend score is nearly the maximum, while mid-sized holders are distributing and small buyers are merely marginally accumulating. That seems to indicate that retail is distributing into fear and large players are absorbing the supply. By the way, this is not a prediction. We're merely describing the behavior based on our observation. Now, there's one more level that matters here, which is Bitcoin is trading almost exactly at the active realized price at around 87.7K, while the classic realized price is sitting at about 56.1K. Classic realized price includes dormant coins, which is why it's much lower. However, active realized price filters for recently active supply, which better reflects the current market condition. So this is the average cost basis of active participant, meaning the market is at a break even. No one is winning, no one is losing, and everyone is waiting. So if ETF are bleeding and retail is selling, then who's actually buying? Now in this video, we have at least part of the answer. Corporate treasuries. Some of the companies out there alone added over 1,200 Bitcoin last week at price right in this range, around 88,000. And to me, that's not panic buying. That's deliberate accumulations, and they're not alone. Public companies holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet added roughly 42,000 Bitcoin in December. And at the same time, stablecoin supply just hit an all-time high at about $310 billion. And that's not money leaving the system. That's dry powder waiting to be deployed into the market. So now you have two opposing stories. Above the surface, you have fear, red flows, hesitations, and below the surface, you have absorptions, balance sheet buying, and dry powder. And only one of these can be right. So let's talk about timing, because this environment can't persist. Right now, three forces are holding the market in place. You have the thin holiday liquidity, you got text-driven selling, and then you have institutional absence. All three of these would have to end together. So as we head into January, there's going to be new allocation cycles, there's going to be fresh capital decisions, and that forces a resolution. So in January, we're going to know either December selling was absorbed and price can move higher with less resistance, or the selling continues when real liquidity returns and this range is going to break lower. The data that we have doesn't predict direction, it just tells us the market is extremely fragile and the time buffer is running out. Alright guys, that's all I have for you guys today. If you have any questions or you see something that I missed, make sure you leave a comment. If this helped you understand the setup into January, subscribe and click the like button, and I'll see you in the next one.